At my own engagement party, Katherine stood on the stage holding another man's hand and announced to everyone that she was going to marry him instead. The guests gasped and whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between Katherine and me with pity. I could feel their sympathy weighing down on me like a heavy blanket. Everyone expected me to break down, to cause a scene, to beg her to reconsider. But I did none of those things. Instead, I started clapping slowly and deliberately. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom as I walked toward the stage with a calm smile on my face. I pulled out the engagement ring I had been carrying in my pocket, the one I was supposed to place on her finger tonight, and held it up for everyone to see. I said clearly so everyone could hear, "Katherine, I wish you and your new fiancé a lifetime of happiness together. May you have many children and grow old together in perfect harmony." The room fell into stunned silence. Katherine's face turned pale as she stared at me in disbelief. The man beside her, some trust fund kid named Garrett, whom I had never even met before tonight, smirked arrogantly as if he had won some kind of prize. I placed the ring gently on the gift table near the stage, right next to the elaborate flower arrangements that Katherine had spent weeks choosing. Then I turned to Sandra, Katherine's best friend since childhood, who had been standing near the bar, looking just as shocked as everyone else. Sandra had always been kind to me, always treated me like family even when Katherine's parents looked down on me for being poor. I walked over to her and said, "Sandra, I've had a bit too much champagne tonight. Would you mind driving me home? I don't think I should be behind the wheel right now." She blinked at me in confusion but nodded quickly. "Of course, Thomas. Let me get my keys." As I walked toward the exit with Sandra following behind me, Katherine suddenly rushed down from the stage and grabbed my arm tightly. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin through my suit jacket. "Thomas, what do you think you're doing? You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about this." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then slowly raised my eyes to meet hers with a cold expression I had never shown her before. I pulled my arm free from Katherine's grasp and said in a voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "Miss Monroe, I believe you just announced your engagement to another man. There is nothing left for us to discuss. I wish you well." The formal way I addressed her, using her last name instead of the pet names I had called her for 5 years, made her freeze in place. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I didn't wait for her to recover. I simply turned and walked out of the ballroom with Sandra, hurrying to catch up with me. The night air outside felt cold against my face as we reached the parking lot. Sandra unlocked her car and we both got in without speaking. She started the engine but didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she turned to look at me with concern written all over her face. "Thomas, are you okay? What just happened in there? Katherine has been planning this engagement party for months. Why would she suddenly announce she's marrying someone else?" I leaned back against the passenger seat and closed my eyes. "It's a long story, Sandra. Can you just drive? I'll explain everything once we get away from here." She nodded and pulled out of the parking lot. As we drove through the city streets, I finally allowed myself to think about how I had ended up in this situation. My name is Thomas Reed and I am 28 years old. For the past 5 years, I had been in a relationship with Katherine Monroe, the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city. We met during our final year of college when I was working 3 part-time jobs to pay for my tuition and she was the popular girl that every guy wanted to date. I never thought someone like Katherine would even notice someone like me. I came from a poor family in the countryside. My parents were farmers who worked their fingers to the bone just to send me to college. I wore the same 5 outfits in rotation, lived in the cheapest dormitory, and ate instant noodles for most of my meals. But Katherine saw past all of that, or so I thought. She approached me one day in the library where I was studying and asked if I could help her with her economics homework. That was how it started. We began spending more time together. She would seek me out for study sessions, then for coffee, then for walks around campus. I fell for her completely. She was beautiful, confident, and charming. She made me feel like I was special, like I mattered. When she asked me to be her boyfriend 6 months later, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. I promised myself I would work hard and give her the life she deserved. After graduation, I started working at a small accounting firm while Katherine took a position at her father's company. The difference in our lifestyles became more apparent. She lived in a luxury penthouse apartment that her parents bought her, drove an expensive car, and wore designer clothes. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood and took the bus everywhere. But Katherine always told me she didn't care about money, that she loved me for who I was. Her parents, however, made their feelings very clear. Her father, Mr. Monroe, looked at me like I was dirt on his expensive shoes. Her mother, Mrs. Monroe, Would make passive-aggressive comments about my cheap clothes and lack of prospects. They made it obvious. They thought their daughter was too good for me. But Katherine would always defend me and tell me not to worry about what they thought. For 5 years, I worked myself to exhaustion. I took on extra projects at work, freelanced on weekends, and saved every penny I could. I was determined to prove to Katherine's parents that I was worthy of their daughter. Last year, I finally got promoted to senior accountant with a significant raise. It still wasn't anywhere near the wealth Katherine's family had, but it was progress. I saved up for 6 months to buy an engagement ring. It wasn't a huge diamond like the ones Katherine's friends wore, but it was the best I could afford. 3 months ago, I proposed to Katherine at the same spot where we had our first date. She said yes, with tears in her eyes, and I thought my dreams were finally coming true. We started planning the engagement party. Katherine insisted on a grand celebration at the Grandview Hotel, one of the most expensive venues in the city. I tried to suggest something more modest, something I could actually help pay for. But she said her parents wanted to host it. And I shouldn't worry about the cost. I should have seen the warning signs. Over the past few months, Katherine had been distant. She would cancel our dates at the last minute, claiming she was busy with work. She stopped responding to my messages for hours, sometimes days. When I asked her what was wrong, she would snap at me and say I was being clingy and paranoid. I told myself she was just stressed about the wedding planning and her job. Then tonight happened. I arrived at the engagement party straight from work, still wearing my office clothes because I didn't have time to go home and change into the new suit I had bought for the occasion. The party was already in full swing when I got there. Katherine was on the stage in a stunning red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was Garrett Blackwood, the son of a billionaire real estate developer. I had heard Katherine mention his name a few times in passing, saying he was a business associate of her father's. But the way they stood together, the way his arm was wrapped possessively around her waist, the way she looked up at him with stars in her eyes, told me everything I needed to know. And then she made the announcement that shattered my world. Sandra's voice pulled me back to the present. "Thomas, we're here. This is your apartment building, right?" I opened my eyes and realized we had been sitting in the parking lot for several minutes while I was lost in my thoughts. "Yeah, this is it. Thank you for driving me home, Sandra." She turned off the engine and looked at me seriously. "I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on. Katherine is my best friend, but what she did tonight was cruel and humiliating. You deserve an explanation, and so do I." I invited Sandra up to my small apartment. It was embarrassing to let her see how I lived, especially compared to the luxury she and Katherine were used to, but she had driven me home and deserved to know the truth. As we climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, I could hear my neighbors arguing through thin walls and smell someone cooking fish in the hallway. Sandra didn't comment on any of it, which I appreciated. Once inside, I offered her the only chair I had while I sat on my bed. My entire apartment consisted of one room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen combined, plus a tiny bathroom. Sandra looked around with sad eyes but said nothing about the cramped space or the second-hand furniture. "Would you like some tea?" "It's all I have to offer," I said. She shook her head. "Just tell me what happened, Thomas. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her everything. About how Katherine had been pulling away from me over the past few months. About the canceled dates and unreturned messages. About how I had tried to talk to her about it but she always brushed me off. Sandra listened quietly, her expression growing darker with each detail I shared. I thought maybe she was having second thoughts about marrying someone poor like me. I continued. I thought maybe her parents had finally convinced her I wasn't good enough. But I never imagined she was seeing someone else behind my back, and to announce it so publicly at our own engagement party, in front of all our friends and family, that was beyond cruel. Sandra's hands were clenched into fists in her lap. I can't believe she would do this. Katherine and I have been best friends since we were 7 years old. She never mentioned Garrett to me as anything more than a business connection. When did this start? How long has she been lying to everyone? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe months. Maybe it just started recently. Does it really matter? The result is the same. She chose him over me. Sandra stood up and started pacing the small space between the chair and the door. "This isn't right, Thomas. Katherine owes you an explanation at the very least. You've spent 5 years with her, supported her, loved her. You deserve better than this." I laughed bitterly. What I deserve and what I get are two very different things, Sandra. I've always known I wasn't good enough for Katherine in her parents' eyes. Maybe she finally realized they were right. "Don't say that," Sandra said fiercely. "You're worth 10 of Garrett Blackwood." That guy is a spoiled brat who has never worked a day in his life. Everything he has was handed to him by his father. You've worked hard for everything you have. You put yourself through college, built a career from nothing. Saved money for months to buy Katherine a ring, even though you could barely afford it. That takes character and integrity. Her words surprised me. I had always assumed Sandra looked down on me the same way Katherine's other wealthy friends did, but there was genuine anger and sympathy in her voice. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. But it doesn't change anything. Katherine has made her choice. I'm not going to beg her to change her mind or fight for her. If she wants to be with Garrett, then she can have him. Sandra stopped pacing and stared at me. You're really just going to walk away? After 5 years, you're going to let her go without a fight? What would be the point of fighting? I asked. Even if I somehow convinced her to come back to me, I would always know I was her second choice. I would always wonder if she was comparing me to Garrett, wishing she had chosen him instead. That's no way to build a marriage. Sandra sat back down heavily in the chair. You're right, I'm sorry, I just can't wrap my head around this. Katherine has been acting strange lately, but I thought it was just wedding stress. I never imagined she was planning to betray you like this. We sat in silence for a few moments. My phone, which I had silenced during the drive home, was buzzing constantly in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw dozens of missed calls and messages. Most were from Katherine. A few were from mutual friends asking what happened. I turned the phone off completely and tossed it onto the bed. Aren't you going to answer her? Sandra asked. No, there's nothing she can say that I want to hear right now. Sandra nodded slowly. What are you going to do now? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I had spent the past 5 years building my life around Katherine, planning for a future with her. Now that future had been ripped away in the span of a single announcement. I felt lost, untethered, like I was floating in empty space with nothing to hold on to. I don't know, I admitted. Go to work tomorrow, I guess. Keep living my life. Try to move on. That's it? You're just going to pretend tonight never happened? What else can I do, Sandra? Make a scene? Key her car? Post angry messages on social media? That's not who I am. Katherine made her choice and I have to accept it, even if I don't understand it. Sandra studied my face for a long moment. You're in shock right now. Tomorrow when it sinks in, you're going to be angry and hurt. When that happens, call me. Don't go through this alone. She wrote her phone number on a piece of paper and placed it on my small table. Then she stood to leave. At the door, she paused and turned back to me. Thomas, I know this doesn't help right now, but I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. Katherine is my best friend, but what she did tonight was unforgivable. If you need anything at all, please reach out to me. I mean that. After Sandra left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the walls. The silence was suffocating. I kept replaying the scene from the party over and over in my mind. Katherine's face when she announced she was marrying Garrett. The shock and pity on the guests' faces. The smug satisfaction on Garrett's face. The weight of the ring in my pocket that would never go on Katherine's finger. I should have been crying or screaming or breaking things. But I felt numb, empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only a hollow shell. I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled me into a restless sleep, filled with nightmares of Katherine laughing at me while I begged her to stay. The next morning, my phone was still off and I was grateful for it. I got dressed in my work clothes, skipped breakfast because my stomach was churning too much to eat, and headed to the office. I worked for a mid-sized accounting firm called Peterson & Associates. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and I was good at my job. When I arrived, my coworker Jamie was waiting by my desk with concerned eyes. News traveled fast. Apparently. Jamie approached me carefully, like I was a wounded animal that might lash out at any moment. Thomas, I heard what happened last night. Are you okay? You didn't have to come in today. Mr. Peterson would have understood if you needed a personal day. I set my briefcase down on my desk and powered on my computer, going through the familiar motions of starting my workday. I'm fine, Jamie. I'd rather be here working than sitting at home, dwelling on it. But I wasn't fine. Every time I tried to focus on the spreadsheet in front of me, my mind wandered back to Katherine. I kept seeing her face on that stage, kept hearing her announce she was marrying someone else. The numbness from last night was wearing off and being replaced by a hollow ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. Jamie didn't look convinced by my reassurance, but she didn't push the issue. Well, if you need to talk or need anything at all, I'm here. I nodded and tried to immerse myself in work. Numbers had always made sense to me. They followed logical rules and patterns. Unlike people, numbers never lied or betrayed you. But today, even the familiar comfort of accounting couldn't distract me from the thoughts racing through my head. During lunch break, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications. 87 missed calls, over 200 text messages. My voicemail was full. Most of the calls and messages were from Katherine. I scrolled through some of her texts without opening them fully so she wouldn't see I had read them. "Thomas, please call me back. We need to talk about this. You can't just ignore me. This is childish. I know you're angry, but walking out like that was humiliating. People are talking. My parents are furious. You've made this situation so much worse than it needed to be." I almost laughed at that last message. I had made the situation worse. I wasn't the one who announced I was marrying someone else at our engagement party. But typical Katherine, making herself the victim even when she was clearly in the wrong. There were also messages from her mother, Mrs. Monroe, alternating between demanding I return the gifts Katherine had given me over the years and insulting my character. Her father apparently couldn't be bothered to contact me directly, but Mrs. Monroe helpfully informed me that he thought I was a gold digger who had been using Katherine for her money all along. The irony wasn't lost on me. Some of the messages were from mutual friends, expressing sympathy or asking what really happened. A few were clearly fishing for gossip they could spread around our social circle. I deleted those without responding. There was one message from Sandra checking if I was okay. I sent her a brief reply, saying I was managing and thanked her again for driving me home. The rest of the workday dragged on endlessly. Every minute felt like an hour. I made mistakes in calculations I could normally do in my sleep. I had to redo the same report 3 times because I kept losing focus. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was exhausted not from work but from the effort of pretending to be functional. I took the bus home, watching the city pass by outside the window. Everywhere I looked, I saw couples holding hands, laughing together, lost in their own little worlds. Had Katherine and I ever looked that happy together? When had things started to fall apart? Had there been warning signs I missed or ignored? When I got back to my apartment, there was someone waiting outside my door. For a moment I thought it might be Katherine, and my heart jumped with a confusing mix of hope and dread. But as I got closer, I realized it was Sandra again. She was holding 2 large bags from a local restaurant. "I figured you probably didn't eat lunch and wouldn't have the energy to cook dinner," she said by way of greeting. "So I brought food. I hope you don't mind me showing up unannounced." I was too tired to protest. I unlocked my door and let her in. Sandra unpacked the bags on my small table, revealing containers of pasta, salad, bread, and even a small chocolate cake. "This is too much food," I said. "I can't eat all this." "Then I'll help you," she replied simply. "Sit down and eat, Thomas. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days." She was right. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten something that wasn't instant noodles or cheap takeout. We ate in relative silence for a while. The food was good and I was hungrier than I realized. Sandra seemed content to just sit with me without forcing conversation. Finally, after we had both finished eating, she spoke up. "I went to see Katherine today." I looked up sharply. "Why would you do that?" "Because she's my best friend and I needed to hear her side of the story. I needed to understand why she did what she did." I wasn't sure I wanted to hear this, but I also couldn't help my curiosity. "What did she say?" Sandra sighed and pushed her empty container away. "She said that she's been confused about her feelings for a long time. That she does care about you but she's not sure if it's love or just comfort and familiarity. She said that when she met Garrett 6 months ago, she felt something she had never felt with you. Excitement, passion, spontaneity. She said, being with you felt safe but boring." Each word was like a knife twisting in my chest. Safe but boring. Is that really how Katherine saw me? After everything I had done for her, all the sacrifices I had made, I was just boring to her. Sandra must have seen the pain on my face because she quickly added, "I told her she was being ridiculous and cruel. I told her that excitement and passion fade, but loyalty and dedication are what build a real relationship. I told her she was making a huge mistake choosing Garrett over you." "What did she say to that?" I asked quietly. "She said I wouldn't understand because I've never been in love. She said her parents pushed her toward you because you were stable and hardworking, someone who would be grateful for the opportunity to marry into their family. But now she's old enough to make her own choices and she chooses Garrett." So that was it. I had been Katherine's safe backup plan all along. The responsible choice her parents approved of while she looked for someone more exciting. I felt sick to my stomach. "I'm sorry, Thomas," Sandra said softly. "I thought hearing her explanation might give you closure, but I can see it just made things worse." No, it's better to know the truth, I said. Even though the truth felt like acid burning through my insides. At least now I know where I really stood with her all these years. Sandra reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her loss. Katherine is an idiot if she can't see what an amazing person you are. You're going to find someone who appreciates you properly, someone who doesn't take you for granted. I wanted to believe her, but right now it felt impossible. How could I trust anyone again after this? How could I open my heart to someone when Katherine had just trampled all over it? We talked for a while longer before Sandra left for the night. Alone again, I sat on my bed and stared at the engagement ring, still sitting on my nightstand. I had picked it up from the gift table at the party before leaving, not wanting to leave it behind for someone to steal or for Katherine to take. It represented 6 months of savings and countless hours of overtime work. Now it was just a painful reminder of my foolishness. I should have returned it and gotten a refund, but I couldn't bring myself to do it yet. Maybe part of me was still holding on to hope that this was all a nightmare and I would wake up to find Katherine still my fiancée and our life together still intact. But deep down, I knew that future was gone forever. The next few days passed in a blur of work and sleepless nights. I threw myself into my job with renewed intensity, volunteering for every extra project and staying late at the office. Anything to avoid being alone with my thoughts. My colleagues noticed, but no one said anything directly. They just gave me sympathetic looks and extra space. Katherine continued trying to contact me, but I ignored all her calls and messages. What was left to say? She had made her choice crystal clear. Talking would just prolong the pain. Eventually, the frequency of her attempts decreased from multiple times per day to once daily to every few days. Sandra checked on me regularly, bringing food or just sitting with me in comfortable silence. I was grateful for her presence, even though I couldn't articulate it properly. She never judged me for being depressed or told me to get over it faster. She just existed as a steady, supportive presence in my life. 2 weeks after the disaster of an engagement party, I received an unexpected email at work. The email was from Hartley Investments, one of the largest investment firms in the country. I almost deleted it thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. It was from a Mr. James Hartley himself, the founder and chief executive officer of the company. Dear Mr. Reed, I hope this email finds you well. I recently came across your work on the Morrison account restructuring project and was impressed by your innovative approach to their financial challenges. Your analysis was thorough and your solutions were both creative and practical. I would like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. Would you be available for a meeting this Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Please let me know at your earliest convenience. Best regards, James Hartley. I read the email 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The Morrison account was a project I had worked on 6 months ago for a client who was struggling with debt consolidation. I had spent weeks analyzing their finances and creating a restructuring plan that saved them from bankruptcy. It had been one of my prouder achievements, but I never imagined anyone outside our firm would even hear about it. My hands were shaking as I typed a response, accepting the meeting. This could be nothing, just a courtesy meeting that led nowhere. Or it could be something that changed my career trajectory completely. Either way, it was a welcome distraction from my personal life disaster. When Friday arrived, I wore my best suit, the one I had bought for the engagement party but never got to wear because I went straight from work that night. I arrived at Hartley Investments 15 minutes early and was shown to a luxurious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The contrast between this office and my cramped workspace at Peterson & Associates was stark. Mr. Hartley arrived exactly on time. He was a distinguished man in his late 50s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He shook my hand firmly and got straight to business. Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. I'll be direct with you because I respect your time and mine. I've been looking for someone to head up a new division in my company focused on financial restructuring for struggling businesses. The Morrison account caught my attention because your approach was exactly what I've been trying to implement here. You didn't just crunch numbers, you understood the human element of the business and created solutions that were sustainable long-term. I listened carefully, almost afraid to breathe in case this turned out to be some kind of dream. Mr. Hartley continued. I've done my research on you. Top of your class in college despite working multiple jobs to pay tuition. Consistent excellent performance reviews at Peterson & Associates. Clients specifically request you because you're thorough and trustworthy. That's exactly the kind of person I need leading this division. He slid a folder across the table toward me. This is a formal job offer. The position comes with a substantial salary increase from what you're currently making, full benefits, stock options, and a performance-based bonus structure. Take the weekend to review it and let me know your decision by Monday. I opened the folder with trembling hands and nearly choked when I saw the salary number. It was more than triple what I currently made. This was life-changing money. This was the kind of opportunity people spent their entire careers hoping for. Mr. Hartley, I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous. Can I ask why you're offering this to me specifically? There must be dozens of more experienced candidates with better credentials. He leaned back in his chair and studied me thoughtfully. Experience isn't everything, Mr. Reed. I've hired plenty of experienced people who turned out to be set in their ways and resistant to innovation. What I need is someone hungry, someone willing to work hard and think creatively. Someone who hasn't become jaded or complacent. Your background tells me you're that person. He paused before adding, I also happen to know about your recent personal situation. I'm sorry for what you've been through. But sometimes life's biggest setbacks become the catalyst for our greatest comebacks. This is your chance to prove to yourself and everyone else what you're capable of. I left that meeting feeling like I was walking on air. For the first time since the engagement party disaster, I felt something other than pain and numbness. I felt hope. I felt possibility. That night, I spread the job offer documents across my small table and read through every detail carefully. The position would be demanding with long hours and high-pressure situations. But it was everything I had been working toward my entire career. Sandra called to check on me that evening and I told her about the job offer. She was genuinely excited for me, squealing over the phone loud enough that I had to hold it away from my ear. Thomas, this is amazing. You have to take it. This is your chance to build the life you've always wanted. Katherine is going to regret letting you go when she sees how successful you become. I hadn't thought about it in terms of making Katherine regret her choice. I was just focused on moving forward with my life. But Sandra's words planted a seed in my mind. Maybe success was the best revenge. Maybe proving I could thrive without Katherine would be more satisfying than any angry confrontation. Over the weekend, I carefully reviewed every aspect of the job offer. I researched Hartley Investments, read articles about Mr. Hartley's business philosophy, and even reached out to a former colleague who had connections to the company. Everything I learned reinforced that this was a legitimate once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On Monday morning, I arrived at work early and went straight to Mr. Peterson's office. He was a decent man who had given me a chance when I was fresh out of college with no experience. I owed him honesty about my plans. Mr. Peterson, I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice. I've been offered a position at another firm, and I've decided to accept it. He looked surprised but not entirely shocked. Let me guess. Hartley Investments. James called me last week to ask about you as a reference. I told him you were one of the best analysts I've ever hired, and that I'd be sorry to lose you but wouldn't stand in your way if he made you an offer. I hadn't expected that. You recommended me? Mr. Peterson smiled. Thomas, you've been wasted here for a while now. This firm is small, and our growth potential is limited. You need a bigger stage to showcase your talents. I'm happy for you, truly. Though I will need you to finish out your current projects before you leave. Of course, I agreed immediately. I wouldn't leave you in a difficult position. That afternoon, I called Mr. Hartley and formally accepted the position. He sounded pleased and told me the legal team would send over the contract paperwork. My start date would be exactly 3 weeks from that day, giving me time to wrap up loose ends at Peterson and Associates and prepare for the transition. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe properly again. The constant weight on my chest lightened slightly. I wasn't magically over Katherine or the betrayal, but I had something positive to focus on. I had a future to build that didn't revolve around her. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since the engagement party. I went out. Not to a bar or club, but to a quiet restaurant where I ordered a proper meal and actually tasted the food instead of just mechanically chewing and swallowing. I sat alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. As I was finishing my meal, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, Thomas, this is Jack Morrison, the client whose business you saved last year. I heard through the grapevine about your new position at Hartley Investments. Congratulations. You deserve every success. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. My first month at Hartley Investments was intense but exhilarating. I was challenged in ways I had never experienced at Peterson and Associates. The projects were complex, the stakes were high, and the resources available were incredible. I had a team of 3 analysts working under me, a real office with a door that closed, and access to financial databases that cost more than my annual salary used to be. Mr. Hartley was demanding but fair. He expected excellence but also recognized hard work and results. Within my first 2 weeks, I had already started restructuring a failing restaurant chain's debt portfolio. Within 3 weeks, I had saved them from bankruptcy and negotiated terms with their creditors that gave them breathing room to rebuild. The grateful owners sent a fruit basket to my office that was bigger than my old desk. The dramatic increase in my income meant I could finally move out of my cramped studio apartment. Sandra helped me apartment hunt, and we found a beautiful 2-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood with actual amenities like a gym and a doorman. It wasn't penthouse luxury, but it felt like a palace compared to where I had been living. On the day I moved into my new apartment, Sandra brought champagne to celebrate. We stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights and toasted to new beginnings. "Look at you," Sandra said with genuine pride in her voice. "2 months ago your world was falling apart and now you're absolutely thriving. I'm so proud of you, Thomas. I couldn't have gotten through it without you," I admitted. "You've been there for me every step of the way. I don't think I ever properly thanked you for that." Sandra's cheeks flushed slightly and she looked away. "That's what friends do. Besides, spending time with you has been the highlight of my weeks. You're easy to be around, Thomas. You don't play games or have hidden agendas. After dealing with the drama in Katherine's social circle for so many years, your straightforwardness is refreshing." There was something in her tone that made me look at her more carefully. Sandra had been Katherine's friend first, but over the past 2 months we had developed our own friendship independent of Katherine. I had gotten used to her presence in my life. I looked forward to her text checking on me and her random visits with food or just company. When had that shift happened? Before I could analyze it further, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer it. "Hello. Thomas, it's Garrett Blackwood." The voice on the other end was smooth and confident, exactly as I remembered from the brief moments I had seen him at the engagement party. I tensed immediately. "What do you want, Garrett?" "I'm calling because we need to talk. Man to man. There are some things you should know about Katherine and the situation between the 3 of us." I almost hung up right there. I had moved on from Katherine and had no interest in rehashing the past, but curiosity won out. What could you possibly have to say that I would want to hear? "Meet me for coffee tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock at the Riverside Cafe downtown. I promise it will be worth your time." Against my better judgment, I agreed. After hanging up, I turned to find Sandra watching me with concerned eyes. "Who was that?" "Garrett Blackwood. He wants to meet tomorrow to talk." Sandra's expression darkened immediately. "That's a bad idea, Thomas. Whatever he has to say is probably manipulation or lies meant to mess with your head. You've been doing so well. Don't let him pull you back into drama." She was probably right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to hear what Garrett had to say. "I'll be careful, but I need closure on this chapter of my life and maybe talking to him will provide that." The next morning, I arrived at the Riverside Cafe 5 minutes early. Garrett was already there, sitting at a corner table, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. He stood when he saw me and extended his hand. I didn't shake it. "Thank you for coming," he said smoothly, not seeming bothered by my refusal to shake hands. "Please sit. I already ordered coffee for both of us." I sat down cautiously, every instinct telling me this was a trap of some kind. "Get to the point, Garrett. Why did you want to meet?" He leaned back in his chair and studied me with calculating eyes. "I wanted to meet the man who had Katherine convinced she was in love for 5 years. I wanted to see what you had that made her resist my advances for so long." "Your advances?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Yes," Garrett said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "Katherine and I met a year ago, not 6 months ago like she told everyone. We've been involved intimately for about 8 months now. But she kept going back and forth between us, unable to make a decision about who she really wanted." The words hit me like physical blows. A year. Katherine had been cheating on me for most of our engagement. All those cancelled dates, those unreturned messages, those times she claimed to be working late. She had been with Garrett. "Why are you telling me this?" I managed to ask through clenched teeth. Garrett's smile turned cold. "Because Katherine is pregnant with my child and she's refusing to marry me. She keeps saying she made a mistake, choosing me over you. She's been trying to contact you constantly, hasn't she, begging for another chance." I had blocked Katherine's number weeks ago, so I had no idea if this was true, but the satisfaction in Garrett's voice told me he wasn't lying about the pregnancy at least. "She's been crying constantly, refusing to eat, making herself sick with guilt," Garrett continued. "My parents are pressuring me to marry her before she starts showing and people start talking. But I don't want damaged goods. I don't want a woman who's still pining for her poor ex-boyfriend while carrying my baby." "So you thought telling me all this would accomplish what exactly?" I asked, my hands curling into fists under the table. I thought maybe if you took her back, she'd stop being my problem. Or at least stop crying every time she sees me and wishing I was you. The sheer audacity of this man was astounding. He had pursued a woman he knew was engaged, gotten her pregnant, and now wanted me to clean up his mess because she was inconvenient to him. I stood up abruptly. You're both awful people who deserve each other. Katherine made her choice, and she has to live with the consequences. I'm not interested in being anyone's backup plan or safety net. Find someone else to fix your problems. I turned to leave, but Garrett called after me. She never loved you, you know. She told me you were convenient, a safe option her parents approved of. But she was bored out of her mind the entire time she was with you. The only reason she wants you back now is because I'm pulling away and she's scared of being alone. I stopped but didn't turn around. If that's true, then why are you here trying so hard to convince me to take her back? Sounds like you're the one who's actually scared. Scared that even after everything, she still thinks I'm better than you. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. My heart was racing and my hands were shaking with a combination of anger and something else. Relief maybe. Garrett's cruel words had actually given me the final piece of closure I needed. Katherine hadn't just chosen someone else over me. She had betrayed me thoroughly and completely for months. Any lingering doubts I had about whether I had given up too easily or should have fought for her evaporated completely. I called Sandra as soon as I got outside. She answered on the first ring. How did it go? What did he say? I filled her in on the entire conversation. By the time I finished, Sandra was practically growling with rage. That absolute garbage human being. Both of them. Thomas, I'm done with Katherine. I've been friends with her since we were children, but I can't overlook this. What she did to you was unforgivable. You don't have to end your friendship because of me, I said, even though part of me was touched by her loyalty. This isn't just because of you, Sandra insisted. This is about basic human decency. Katherine lied to everyone. Cheated on you for months, humiliated you publicly, and is now pregnant with another man's baby while trying to crawl back to you. That's not the person I thought I knew. That's not someone I want in my life. We talked for a while longer before hanging up. I went to work feeling emotionally drained but also strangely lighter. The last threads connecting me to Katherine had been severed. I was truly free to move forward now. That evening, I did something impulsive. I unblocked Katherine's number just to see if what Garrett had said was true. My phone immediately flooded with messages, spanning the past few weeks. Thomas, please, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm pregnant and scared and I don't know what to do. Garrett isn't who I thought he was. You were right to walk away from me. I love you. I've always loved you. I was just too stupid and immature to realize it until it was too late. Please just talk to me. Give me a chance to explain and apologize properly. The messages went on, becoming increasingly desperate and emotional. The most recent one from this morning read, I know you probably hate me and you have every right to. But I need you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me and I destroyed it with my own selfishness. I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm so sorry. I stared at the messages for a long time. Part of me, the part that had loved Katherine for 5 years, felt a pang of sympathy for her situation. But the larger part, the part that had been humiliated and betrayed, felt nothing but cold indifference. I typed out one message and sent it before I could second-guess myself. Katherine, I got your messages. I know about the pregnancy. I know the truth about how long you were seeing Garrett behind my back. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I wish you well, but I have no interest in being part of your life in any capacity. Please stop contacting me. Goodbye. Then I blocked her number again, this time permanently. I also blocked her on all social media and email. It was time to close that door completely and lock it behind me. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Sandra. Did you just send Katherine a final goodbye message? She's calling me absolutely hysterical, saying you told her to never contact you again. Yes, I confirmed. It needed to be done. Clean break, no room for misinterpretation. Sandra was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? I thought about it carefully. Free. I feel free. Good, Sandra said firmly. You deserve to be free of her and all the toxicity she brought into your life. Now you can focus on building the future you actually want. Over the next few weeks, my life continued to improve in ways I couldn't have imagined 2 months earlier. My division at Hartley Investments was exceeding all targets and expectations. I received a significant performance bonus and Mr. Hartley publicly praised my work at a company meeting. Word was spreading in financial circles about the young analyst who was revolutionizing business, restructuring strategies. 6 months after the disaster engagement party, My life had transformed completely. I had moved up from my 2-bedroom apartment to a beautiful penthouse with a view of the city skyline. I drove a sleek car that I had always dreamed of owning. But more importantly, I was genuinely happy. Not the forced happiness of pretending everything was fine, but real contentment with where my life was heading. Sandra had become my closest friend and confidant. We spent most of our free time together, whether it was working on projects, exploring new restaurants in the city, or just sitting in comfortable silence while we both worked on our laptops. Somewhere along the way, my feelings for her had shifted from friendship to something deeper. I found myself noticing little things about her. The way she laughed at her own jokes before delivering the punchline. The way she always brought me coffee exactly how I liked it without having to ask. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about her passion for interior design. I was planning to tell her how I felt, but I wanted to wait for the right moment. I didn't want to rush into another relationship or risk ruining the friendship we had built if she didn't feel the same way. Then came the night of the annual charity gala hosted by the Business Association. It was one of the biggest events of the year, where all the wealthy and influential people in the city gathered. Mr. Hartley insisted I attend, as a representative of Hartley Investments. He said it was important for me to network and build connections. I invited Sandra to be my date, though I carefully used the word companion instead to avoid any pressure. Sandra showed up at my apartment, looking absolutely stunning in an emerald green dress that took my breath away. Her hair was styled elegantly and she wore minimal jewelry that somehow made her look even more sophisticated. "Wow," I said without thinking. "You look incredible." She smiled shyly. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The gala was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the same venue where my engagement party had taken place. I hesitated at the entrance. Memories flooding back. Sandra seemed to sense my discomfort and squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Different event, different chapter of your life," she reminded me. "You're not the same person who walked out of here 6 months ago." She was right. I squared my shoulders and we walked in together. The ballroom was decorated beautifully with crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, and elaborate floral arrangements. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everyone was dressed in their finest, trying to outdo each other with expensive clothing and jewelry. I recognized many faces from my engagement party. Some people nodded politely when they saw me. Others whispered behind their hands. No doubt gossiping about my presence. I didn't care. I was here for professional networking, not social approval. Mr. Hartley found me within minutes and introduced me to several important business leaders. I shook hands, exchanged business cards, and discussed potential collaborations. Sandra stayed by my side the entire time, charming everyone with her wit and intelligence. Several people assumed she was my girlfriend and neither of us corrected them. Then I saw Katherine across the room. She was standing with her parents and Garrett, but she looked completely different from the confident woman I had known. She had gained weight, probably from the pregnancy, though she wore a loose dress that hid it well. Her face was pale and drawn, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't been sleeping well. She looked miserable. Garrett stood next to her with a proprietary hand on her lower back, but his attention was on a group of young women near the bar. He looked bored and restless. Katherine's mother kept shooting disapproving looks at her daughter. Her father looked stern and disappointed. The whole family dynamic screamed dysfunction. Katherine saw me at the same moment I saw her. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom. For a second, everything else faded away. I saw recognition, regret, longing, and pain flash across her face in rapid succession. She took a step toward me, but her mother grabbed her arm and said something sharp that made Katherine flinch and stop. I turned away deliberately and focused on the conversation Sandra was having with a potential client. I wasn't going to let Katherine's presence ruin this evening. I had moved on, and seeing her only confirmed that I had made the right choice. But Katherine apparently hadn't gotten the message. About an hour into the event, she approached me while Sandra had stepped away to use the restroom. "Thomas," she said quietly. "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." I looked at her properly for the first time in 6 months. Up close, she looked even worse than from across the room. Her hands were shaking and she looked like she might cry at any moment. "There's nothing to talk about, Katherine. I thought I made that clear in my last message to you." "Please," she begged. "I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I need you to hear me out." Against my better judgment, I gestured to a quiet corner away from the main crowd. 5 minutes. That's all I'm giving you." Katherine took a shaky breath before speaking. "I was wrong about everything. About you, about Garrett, about what I wanted in life. You were stable and reliable and I mistook that for boring. Garrett was exciting and unpredictable, and I mistook that for passion. But excitement without substance is just chaos. And now I'm stuck in a nightmare of my own making. Katherine, I'm sorry your situation isn't what you hoped for, but that's not my problem to solve. I know, she said quickly. I'm not asking you to fix anything or take me back. I know I destroyed any chance of that. I just needed you to know that you were right. About everything. You told me that Garrett would hurt me, and you were right. You told me I was making a mistake, and you were right. You deserved so much better than how I treated you. There was a time when hearing Katherine admit she was wrong would have felt like vindication. But now I just felt nothing. She was a stranger to me, someone from my past who no longer had any power over my emotions. I appreciate you saying that, I said neutrally. I hope things work out for you and your baby. I really do. But we're done, Katherine. There's no going back, and honestly, I don't want to go back even if I could. Katherine's face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. I know. I see the way you look at Sandra. The way you used to look at me a long time ago. She's lucky to have you. Don't let her take you for granted the way I did. Before I could respond to that, Sandra appeared at my side. She had clearly been watching from a distance and decided it was time to intervene. She slipped her hand into mine naturally and addressed Katherine with polite but cool courtesy. Hello, Katherine. I hope you're well. If you'll excuse us, Thomas and I were just about to join Mr. Hartley's table for dinner. It was a clear dismissal. Katherine looked between Sandra and me, seeming to understand something in that moment. She nodded slowly and walked away without another word. I watched her return to her family's table where Garrett barely acknowledged her arrival. Are you okay? Sandra asked softly. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I'm completely okay. Better than okay, actually. Seeing her just confirmed that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Sandra smiled up at me, and there was something in her eyes that made my heart race. Before I could analyze it, we were swept up in dinner conversation with various business leaders at our table. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of networking, dancing, and champagne. Near the end of the night, a slow song came on and Sandra pulled me onto the dance floor. We swayed together naturally, like we had been dancing together for years instead of this being the first time. Thomas, Sandra said quietly, her head resting against my shoulder. Can I tell you something? Of course. You can tell me anything. I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've been falling for a while now. I tried to ignore it because of everything with Katherine and I didn't want to complicate your life or our friendship. But after tonight, seeing Katherine try to pull you back into her orbit and watching you stay completely unmoved, I realized I needed to be honest with you. Life's too short to hide how we feel. I pulled back slightly so I could look at her face. Her expression was open and vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Sandra, I've been wanting to tell you the same thing, but I was terrified of ruining what we have. You've been my rock through the worst period of my life. You've seen me at my lowest and never judged me. You've celebrated every success and milestone with genuine joy. Somewhere along the way, you became the most important person in my life. I'm completely in love with you. Her eyes filled with happy tears and she laughed, a sound of pure joy. Really? You're not just saying that because I said it first? Really? I confirmed. Sandra, you're everything Katherine never was. You're genuine, supportive, intelligent, funny, and kind. You challenge me to be better without making me feel inadequate. You stand beside me as an equal partner. Not behind me. Or ahead of me. You're exactly who I've been looking for my entire life. I just didn't realize it until recently. Sandra kissed me then, right there in the middle of the dance floor with hundreds of people around us. It was soft and sweet and perfect. When we broke apart, several people near us were clapping and smiling. Apparently our moment hadn't been as private as I thought. Across the ballroom, I caught a glimpse of Katherine watching us. The expression on her face was devastating, a mixture of regret and heartbreak and acceptance. She turned away and buried her face in her hands. Her mother tried to comfort her, but Katherine shook her off. For a brief moment, I felt a flash of pity for her. But then Sandra squeezed my hand and smiled at me with so much love and happiness that Katherine's pain faded into background noise that no longer mattered. 1 year later, Sandra and I got married in a small, intimate ceremony with only our closest friends and family. Unlike the grand engagement party Katherine had insisted on, our wedding was exactly what we both wanted. Simple, meaningful, and filled with genuine love and laughter. Mr. Hartley attended and gave a toast about how proud he was of the man I had become. Jack Morrison, the client whose business I had saved, came and told everyone the story of how my financial restructuring had saved his family legacy. Sandra's parents welcomed me with open arms, treating me like the son they never had. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Katherine had given birth to a baby girl and that she and Garrett had gotten married in a small courthouse ceremony with no celebration. Apparently, their marriage was rocky from the start, full of arguments and resentment. Garrett was already rumored to be seeing other women. Katherine had dropped out of the social scene completely, focused on caring for her baby and dealing with her failing marriage. I felt no satisfaction in hearing about her struggles. I didn't wish her ill, but I also didn't waste emotional energy on her anymore. She was part of my past, a chapter that taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and not settling for people who didn't appreciate me. As Sandra and I danced our first dance as husband and wife, I looked into her eyes and felt overwhelming gratitude for how my life had turned out. Getting dumped at my engagement party had felt like the end of my world. But it had actually been the beginning of something far better than I could have imagined.